Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Morta. I am a teacher at the Immigrant Education Society, and I also work with the Literacy Center of Expertise, doing curriculum design for literacy learners. And today I wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about ways that I use routines to help my literacy learners. This is a presentation that I delivered yesterday in the Let's Talk About series put on by the Literacy Center of Expertise and HSL. If you're interested in attending those sessions, I will tell you how you can in the future at the end of the presentation. So first off, just so we all have sort of a working shared definition of what a routine is, I would say that a routine is just a way to simplify a complex learning environment and inform students about what exactly they are to expect from their learning in your classroom and what is expected of them as learners. Pictured on the left here is something that I shared with my students in the first day of our new semester here at TIES. Started in October. And this was just a way that I wanted to present to them their routine for the entire semester, which is 6 months. In my case, I'm a part-time 1-2 literacy teacher. So every day they know what to expect. It's predictable, it's consistent. Before I go into more of how I set up routines in my classrooms, I just wanted to talk about why they are beneficial and look at some of the evidence-based approaches. As someone who has a degree in psychology, I always find the cognitive psychology aspects of learning really interesting. And so I was particularly interested in this book from 2018. And the three biggest takeaways that I had from the book in terms of research that backs up routines are the following. So the first is how routines can really help students with their motivation. I know that I feel this way, that when I feel like I can do something, I am more likely to then have success. The second thing the book really talked about, and for me, I think this was the biggest takeaway, is the idea of cognitive overload. So routines are really beneficial for learners, I would say any learner, because what the book says is that we can only really hold 4 bits of information in our working memory at once. Period. That's it. The book also talked about language learning, literacy learning, and really any learning. You can kind of perceive it as a process of encoding. So you're presented with information, it goes in, and then also you need to be able to retrieve it. So going out. In terms of learning in general, but even specifically to language, you need to help your learners get information from working memory to their long-term memory, which is what the book refers to as durable learning, because that's where everything sort of gets consolidated and how you're able to then apply your language and literacy skills in new contexts. So the book talks about routines as a way to help free up some of that working memory space so that students are better able to focus on language, literacy skills, and any learning strategies that you want to share with them. So it's just a way of reducing how to do things so that you can focus their available working memory more on what you want them to learn. The last thing I think is something that we can all also understand is that routines help learners feel safe and they help them feel a sense of belonging. There's a lot of research out there that shows that this is especially important for students that have experienced trauma in their lives, because of course, a worried brain or a nervous brain, a scared brain isn't going to be available for learning. So if you can create a space that is predictable, it helps learners feel safe and comfortable. It helps with connection, and then you're able to then focus on language and literacy, which is why your students are there. So that's sort of just the 3 biggest highlights that were my takeaway. And now I'd like to look at just a few ways that I try to integrate routines into my daily practice. So the first, how do I create community in my classroom? Going back to the previous slide about removing that affective filter. So again, pictured here are some of the Google slides that I make for my students. I go through the same ones every day. Mondays, for example, I always start with what you did on the weekend. I personally, with my level, like to share photos with everything that I do. So I'll circle the photos. We'll talk about what we did on the weekend. Everyone takes turns. There's no focus on structure or grammar or really anything like that. It's just more about connection and getting to know each other. Then usually I'll follow that with just sort of varying activities, but all centered on myself as a teacher, yourself as a student. I just like to call them fluency warm-ups. So it's just as you're getting into the groove of your class, it's not, jarring with something new right away. It's sort of a way to ease them in, talk about themselves, practice fluency, and especially with my class, or I would say with lots of classes, if people need to show up and take a few minutes to get settled, if people trickle in a few minutes after the start of class, it's a nice way to ease everyone in while still practicing skills and feeling success in doing so. The last thing that I like to do personally is what is referred to as translanguaging. So this is just interacting with students with their full linguistic repertoire. So I have just enough Arabic, just enough Pashto, Kinyarwandan that I'm able to say good morning to all my students in their own languages or their own home languages. Maybe a thank you, how are you? Just as another way to acknowledge them as learners who have a lot of abilities. And even though they're learning English, they know a lot already. So it's just like a nice strength-based way that I like to start the day. So this one, how do I organize materials? So for all my students, I give them a package. Oh, I don't know if you can see that there. Well, you can't see it here, but it's pictured there. So the package is for everyone, my in-person students and my students at home. I like it because it's sort of an equitable way of making sure that everyone has the resources that they need. I don't have to think about if they have something at home or not. I know that they do because I gave it to them. Something I also like to do is color code the duotangs. This is something that I learned with my work with students that have learning disabilities, is that the more you can sort of give students a framework for a learning goal, the easier it is for them to focus on the goal. So for my students, we always do red duotang items first. So that's things like the weather, calendar, things about themselves, followed by the yellow duotang, which is always phonics and literacy work. So anything that is related to literacy skills in a more potentially isolated way, like some of the Cassie and Dami books from the Literacy Center of Expertise or English Unlocked, or types of things that focus explicitly on building literacy skills as opposed to modules, goes in the yellow duotang. And then number 3 is the PBLA modules, as the organization I work with uses the PBLA framework. So we're currently working on greetings and introductions in the blue duotang, but when it comes time for the next unit, which is, I think we're going to do grocery shopping, I would then put all the items that students need for that unit in the blue duotang. My students at home would come pick up their new blue duotang, and then we all have the same resources. I also find that with this type of thing, it helps to save time. I teach a 3-hour class, and it can go pretty quickly because there's actually a lot to get through in 3 hours. And so I like color coding because it's a nice way for me to reduce transition times and have more of those 3-hour minutes focused on learning. So the one that was biggest for me in the book was, how do I manage cognitive overload? So for this one, I think I typically like to focus on fewer things done over and over and over again. So for this one, I like to have the same structure. Specifically shown here is sorting, the act of sorting words or themes or words with similar sounds, but with a flexible focus. So on the left here, I have pictured something that I did in my foundation class. It's focusing on the fruit module, the weather module, and the school module that we did, sorting pictures that they would all have at home and in class into the correct category. On the right, same thing is for our greetings and introductions module. But if I wanted to do it again, the same sorting with the same images, I could have a different focus. So I could do it the first time, maybe number 1, wedding, number 2, birthday. Maybe I do it again the next day. Number 1, let's do words or images or vocabulary that have 1 syllable. And here, I don't think there would be any, but for 2, there would be baby, or birthday, or wedding. So it's the same structure with the same materials, but the focus is flexible. So I'm able to better integrate the literacy skills from ESL for All into my teaching. Yeah, so in this example, I have students with images from English Unlocked, and they're sorting by medial sound in CVC words. Again, I like sorting activities in particular because I think it's predictable, it's consistent, and again, like I said, I'm able to have the same structure every time, but insert the skills that I want to work on. So just one more way that I do that, or I try to do that in class, is with daily shared writing. I wanted to highlight this one because I think writing can be hard, at least for me, to figure out ways to practice writing skills in a way that has meaning for students. So with this one, I do the same thing every day. Today is, we write the day, the weather, the temperature. I like it because I can use it for fluency. So they have the same closed sentences every day, but then I can also use it for accuracy practice. So for example, I can use it sort of as a way to sort of see what they need to work on. So yesterday, I noticed that students need to work on spacing between words. So this is a familiar context that we do every day. They write, and then I'm able to address spacing. Okay, let's circle, or let's highlight between the words to make sure your space is big enough. Or let's circle all the punctuation to highlight that the dot goes at the end of the sentence, not at the end of every line, or capitals, or even just a way to build meta language, the concept of a sentence versus a word versus a letter. I think these are skills that are important for any level, but it's nice to have something that's familiar to them so that I can then focus on that accuracy or potentially meta language vocabulary in a familiar context. Same thing with the picture on the right here. That's how I would use it with speaking and listening, and potentially reading as well. How is the weather today? It's a great way to practice the 5W questions. It's an easy way for me to differentiate because I have a split level class, so I can differentiate maybe for a lower ability, how is the weather today? For a higher ability, what's the weather on the weekend? Do you like that weather? What do you wear? What should I wear on Saturday? It's a nice, familiar, consistent image with flexible entry points for your learners and flexible focus. Finally, how do I integrate technology into my routines? I would say with varying success, but I am trying, and I'm always learning new ways to do this. Pictured here is my classroom. This particular classroom does not have a smartboard, but I do have access to an iPad. So I have my students using the iPad in a different way. I like to use interactive annotations when I teach. So it's a nice way to have students in person interacting with the same image that students can see at home. And I should also note that I like to share the images on the screen are most often images that they have in their duotangs. So let's say the blue duotang on modules, it's an image that they can have physically, they see on the board. It's kind of a nice multimodal way to interact with each other. Here, I don't think I'll play it, but it's just a video of me showing students how to play memory. All that just to show that I will do a lot of modeling and guided practice in a hybrid situation. So online with the duotangs, all the different ways I can do it, but then I'll always follow up with WhatsApp. WhatsApp I find is good for my students because it's something that's accessible to them now. I like it because there's no login required. Pretty much all my students can access things on their phones, or at least their sons or daughters or wives or husbands' phones. And it's a nice way to follow up with independent practice while they are learning digital skills in tandem with everything else they have to do. I'll use it to share audio, in this case, a video, pictures, text messages, online links, just to follow up on whatever we're doing with independent practice. I'm going to skip past that. So thanks for listening. There's so many things to talk about with routines. Those are just a few ways that I try to be mindful of my students, creating a situation where they can have success, and also a situation that's easy and manageable for myself as a teacher. If you have any questions about the resources or about content or ideas, feel free to email me. If you're interested in signing up for the Let's Talk About series put on by Literacy Center of Expertise, you can email Jeremy Wilson. They are the third Thursday of every month. The next one's in November. Also feel free to follow the Literacy Center on Facebook, Instagram, or you can check out our website for more information. Thanks for listening.